Hey guys, tonight we're not just reading history, we're drifting into its depths, exploring the unseen chapters that shaped our world. Forget the dry textbooks and buzzing distractions. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into a journey through time. We'll uncover the incredible resilience of Neanderthals, the fierce spirit of a female samurai legend, the audacious voyages of ancient mariners, and the hidden education of royalty. Each story, a whisper from the past, designed to lull you into a restful understanding of humanity's incredible journey. So, before you get too comfortable, if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, consider liking the video and subscribing. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. Neanderthals, Nature's Architects of Survival. Imagine walking into Ice Age Europe 80,000 years ago. You'd freeze solid, but before that, you might glimpse a Neanderthal, the local apex hominin, optimized for punishment, shorter than us, around 5 feet 4 inches to 5 feet 6. They weren't small, they were condensed. Stocky frames, huge rib cages, broad shoulders, and bones so thick they make ours look like chopsticks. Their limbs were short and powerful, conserving heat, and their hands were massive, perfect for crafting tools or opening pickle jars modern humans wouldn't dare touch. Their faces, long, low skulls with prominent brow ridges, large forward-facing noses, a built-in heater for frosty air, powerful jaws, and expressions likely somewhere between mildly confused and always ready for a fight. These weren't brutish thugs. They were a parallel success story, tailored top to bottom for their environment. Every inch of them screamed, "Yes, I've broken several ribs. Number, I don't regret it." And their brains, bigger than ours, about 1,500 cubic centimeters compared to our 1,350. While bigger doesn't automatically mean smarter. A blue whale has a massive brain but hasn't invented indoor plumbing. Neanderthals used theirs. A large portion went to sensory processing and motor skills, essential for stalking elk in a snowstorm without walking off a cliff. Their visual cortex was huge, giving them incredible eyesight. They were the elite endurance athletes of their day, built for ice storms, cave bears, and hunting dinner with a sharpened stick. Neanderthals weren't just about raw survival. They were surprisingly cultured. Archaeological sites show evidence of intentional burials, sometimes with grave goods or traces of pollen, suggesting flowers. They cared. They mourned. They didn't just toss grandma behind a boulder. For years, we thought art was our thing. Then we found Neanderthal cave paintings in Spain over 64,000 years old, before modern humans even showed up in Europe. Awkward silence. Anthropology professors. Neanderthals also collected decorative objects, pierced shells, feathers, eagle talons. They liked a little flair, a dash of symbolism. They even used ochre on tools, bodies, and possibly faces. Early makeup, perhaps. And yes, the moment you've been waiting for. Neanderthals and modern humans definitely got together. Biblically, DNA testably, when early Homo sapiens migrated into Europe and Asia around 60,000 years ago, they met the locals. Most people of known African descent today carry 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. Somewhere in your ancestry, one of your very great-grandparents had an Ice Age date night that got out of hand. This wasn't just a fluke. Interbreeding happened multiple times. And it wasn't just in one direction. Your wide nose, that could be a Neanderthal gift. Your love of red meat and aversion to cardio, also suspicious. Statistically speaking, you might be part Neanderthal. No offense, it's science. Some Neanderthal genes are linked to skin tone, hair texture, immune response, pain sensitivity, and even sleep patterns. So yes, your brooding tendencies and winter grumpiness might be genetically justified. Neanderthals thrived for nearly 300,000 years, surviving ice ages, saber-toothed predators, and each other. Then, roughly 40,000 years ago, they vanished. No dramatic extinction event, just a fade to black. Theories suggest climate change. Warming weather wasn't their vibe. Competition with Homo sapiens. We reproduced faster, traveled farther, and possibly talked more. And smaller, isolated populations leading to less genetic diversity. But this wasn't a failure. It was a chapter that left a permanent mark. Neanderthals didn't go out with a bang. They were absorbed. Their influence lives on in our DNA, in our bones, in our blood. For most of modern history, they were the victims of bad press. Label, brutish, primitive, and terrible at dinner conversation. Early reconstructions, based on an elderly individual with arthritis, showed them stooped like gorillas. The image stuck. Dumb brute with a club. Why? Probably because it made us feel superior. Humans love a good story about how we were the chosen ones, but only recently has the myth unraveled. Neanderthals were more like us than not. A parallel success. Different strategies, same struggle. So next time you feel a little grumpy in winter, blame your inner Neanderthal. Chapter 2. Gozen, the Samurai Storm. Shifting gears now to a different kind of human marvel. In the war-torn twilight of Japan's Heian period, the battlefield was no place for a woman. Yet, that's precisely where Gozen belonged. Imagine armored men clashing steel, and among them, one lone figure stands out, not because she was out of place, but because she was more skilled, more fearless, and more precise than most warriors around her. Gozen wasn't just some camp follower. She was a trained warrior, a Onamusha from Echigo province. From a young age, she was taught to ride, shoot a bow from horseback, and wield a katana with such ferocity that she left men twice her size bleeding in the dirt. Her loyalty lay with Minamoto no Yoshinaka, a prominent general. But make no mistake, Tamo was his commander, his equal, his enforcer. Contemporary accounts described her as remarkably beautiful, but the compliments didn't stop at her looks. They spoke of her strength, her uncanny skill in archery, and her unmatched swordsmanship. This wasn't poetry, it was battlefield fact. She could break through ranks, decapitate a foe mid-gallop, and keep riding without a misstep. Tamo Gozan was a storm in human form, carving out a space no woman had ever dared claim before. By the time Tamo reached adulthood, Japan was on the brink of collapse. The Genpei War, a bitter civil conflict, erupted in 1180, reshaping the country's power structure. Emperors were manipulated like chess pieces, and the warrior class was seizing control. Tamo, ever loyal, was right in the thick of it with Yoshinaka, her lord and possible lover. He wanted control over Kyoto and the entire country. Tamo wasn't just a token warrior. She led troops into battle, made strategic decisions, and fought on the front lines, blade drawn. She was a symbol of Yoshinaka's audacity, his willingness to defy tradition. One of her most famous victories came at Yokodagawara, where she reportedly led a charge that decimated enemy forces, personally taking the heads of several samurai. Every kill was a receipt, every hit a message. As Yoshinaka gained power, tensions rose with his cousin Yoritomo. The Minamoto clan, splintered by pride, began to turn inward. Tamo, ever loyal, stayed close. But even the strongest sword couldn't cut through politics. The Minamoto Civil War had begun, and Tamo Gozan was fighting her own clan. February 1184, the plains of Awazu were quiet, too quiet. Yoshinaka stood with only a few dozen men, a fugitive. Tamo Gozan, ever at his side, was not about to let him die alone. The odds were hopeless. Hundreds of enemy warriors bore down on them. Amidst the frigid winds, Tamo adjusted her helmet, drew her sword, and charged into legend. According to the 14th century Hike Monogatari, Tamo surged forward like a whirlwind, seeking the strongest opponent. She found Hatakeyama Shigetada, locked blades, and seated him, and decapitated him in one fluid motion. This wasn't just showmanship, it was samurai ethos. To die beautifully, to fight to the last breath. Meanwhile, Yoshinaka's horse got stuck, and a volley of arrows brought him down. His inner circle was extinguished. But Tamo. The records diverge. Some say Yoshinaka ordered her to flee, fearing the shame of dying alongside a woman. Others say she refused, fought her way out, and vanished into the mountains, never to be seen again. Still others claim she was captured, married an enemy general, and later became a noon. None are confirmed, but one thing is certain. Her last recorded act was not one of surrender. It was defiance. Tamo Gozan didn't just disappear. She ascended into legend. Her vanishing act became part of her power, making her immortal. She became a symbol of possibility, a ghost that haunted the samurai ideal. Over time, poets, playwrights, and artists resurrected her, transforming her into a tragic lover, an avenging demon, the last true samurai, but always a figure who defied expectations. In modern Japan, she is mentioned alongside Musashi and Benkei, carrying the unique weight of gender defiance. She wasn't just an exception. She was a challenge. Her presence continues to rally people across every battle for identity, justice, and place. Chapter 3: Ancient Mariners, the Ocean's First Highways. Before satellites lit up the sky and compasses pointed north, ancient mariners stared out over endless horizons, asking the boldest question, "What's out there?" They weren't reckless fools. They were engineers, navigators, and dreamers, with little more than the stars overhead and the winds in their sails. They carved sea routes that became the first arteries of global connection. Humanity's relationship with the sea began over 40,000 years ago. Early humans used rafts to reach distant islands like Australia, requiring crossings of hundreds of miles of open ocean. These weren't lucky accidents. They were planned journeys made with a clear understanding of tides, winds, and celestial patterns. By 3000 BCE, maritime technology flourished in Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and along the Nile. These early seafarers faced enormous challenges. No maps, no written instructions, no guarantee they'd ever return. Yet they went, driven by necessity and curiosity. They read the waves like a book, observed cloud formations over islands, bird flight paths, and how stars rotated. The night sky was their greatest tool. Polaris in the north, the Southern Cross in the south. This wasn't just survival. It was science before science had a name. Long before Athens or Rome, the island of Crete was home to the Minoans 2000 to 1450 BCE, maritime architects who turned the sea into a superhighway. Their economy thrived on trade, reaching Egypt and the Levant. Their ships were designed for speed and stability, carrying olive oil, wine, pottery, and bronze. But more than goods, they carried ideas, art, and technologies. They navigated using stars and visual markers, their consistent returns from long journeys suggesting a deep understanding of seasonal wines. Then came the Phoenicians 1500 to 300 BCE, tireless entrepreneurs. They dominated the eastern Mediterranean not with armies, but with fleets of sleek, fast, and highly maneuverable vessels. They were the middlemen of the ancient world, linking Egypt with Anatolia, Greece with Mesopotamia. They established colonies like Carthage, vast maritime networks reaping commercial benefits. Like Minoans, they used stars and wind patterns, credited with developing one of the first systems of celestial navigation. Their greatest contribution? The alphabet, a revolutionary leap that inspired Greek, Latin, Hebrew, and Arabic scripts. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the planet, an entirely different saga unfolded. The Austronesian seafarers, originating from Taiwan around 3000 BCE. They colonized half the planet's surface without metal tools or written language. By the 1st century CE, they reached Madagascar to the west and Easter Island to the east, an arc spanning over 10,000 miles. Their vessels were marvels, outrigger canoes and double-hull voyaging canoes. They harnessed wind through crab-claw sails and used paddles for precision. Their unparalleled skill in navigation involved using the sun, moon, planets, and over 200 stars, reading ocean wave patterns, following seabird paths, and even tasting seawater for salinity shifts. This wasn't random exploration. It was intentional and repeatable science, passed down orally. Egypt, though known for pyramids, also launched sea expeditions from Red Sea ports. Pharaoh Hatshepsut's voyage to Punt 15th century BC was a landmark, bringing back exotic animals and gold. These were carefully organized missions, planned with monsoon winds and currents in mind. And in the Indus Valley, the Harappans to 600-190 BC were maritime traders. Lothal, a major Harappan port, shows one of the world's earliest known dockyards. Harappan goods found in Mesopotamia suggest a complex trade network stretching to the east. For the ancient Greeks, the sea was destiny. Their city-states relied on the ocean for trade and identity. They colonized the Mediterranean, establishing trade hubs. Their ships evolved from merchants to formidable war machines like the trireme. Athens' navy, at its peak, controlled sea lanes and ensured the free flow of resources. And the Romans, late to the sea, they crushed naval powers. Faced with Carthaginian superiority, they reverse-engineered a captured warship, building hundreds in months, adding the Corvus boarding bridge to turn sea battles into land combat. This innovation gave Rome control of the Mediterranean, which they proudly called Mare Nostrum, our sea. Their fleets ensured trade and imperial rule. These ancient mariners didn't just explore. They defined the seas. Their knowledge, passed down through generations, became the bedrock of future navigation. Phoenician alphabets enabled record-keeping. Austronesian traditions inspired modern wayfinding. Greek observations laid groundwork for geography. Roman engineering gave us ports and lighthouses. Without them, empires might never have risen, and distant peoples might have remained strangers forever. Their impact still moves with the tide. Chapter 4. Royal Education, Born to Rule. In the ancient world, royal birth was a blessing wrapped in a curse. A child born into a palace became more than a person. They became a symbol, a political weapon, and the future of an empire. Their education began in the nursery, surrounded by whispers of lineage and looming threats. They didn't learn for leisure. They learned to command obedience, recite laws, and deliver calculated flattery to foreign envoys. The goals were universal: control, charisma, and continuity. A Babylonian prince was drilled in cuneiform. An Egyptian heir learned hieroglyphs. In Greece, philosophy was essential. In Persia, etiquette was military. Their tutors weren't just teachers. They were handlers, philosophers, priests, generals, and political operatives, carefully chosen and often expendable. If the royal child failed, the tutor paid the price. The stakes were always high. A poorly educated heir was a national liability. Few tutor-student pairings echo louder than Aristotle and Alexander the Great. Philip of Macedon tasked Aristotle with turning his headstrong prince into more than a warrior. Aristotle taught him ethics, rhetoric, zoology, and philosophy, crafting the inner world of a future conqueror. When Alexander conquered, he carried Homer and philosophical texts like sacred weapons. In Rome, Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, tutored young Nero, trying to shape him with virtue and restraint. History shows Nero grew into one of Rome's most infamous tyrants, proving even the best teachers couldn't always overcome dark instincts. In Persia, royal tutors were military men, instilling discipline. In China, Confucian scholars held sway, teaching filial piety and hierarchy. Woe to the tutor who taught the wrong thing. A slip of the tongue could lead to banishment. Royal women were rarely expected to lead armies, but their education was just as strategic. They were future queens, priestesses, and political pawns. In Egypt, queens like Hatshepsut and Nefertiti ruled. Princesses were taught hieroglyphs, religious texts, and estate management by temple priests. Some even participated in governance, rivaling their male counterparts in knowledge. In Persia, royal women managed vast estates and courtly alliances, taught bookkeeping, diplomacy, and political etiquette. Greek historians noted their quiet but formidable education. In Sparta, royal women trained in physical fitness and rhetoric, speaking their minds and commanding estates, while their husbands waged war. In India and China, noble women's education reflected religious and dynastic priorities. Sanskrit, music, poetry, philosophy, or Confucian ethics and palace protocol for those destined for political roles. This extended to governance and statecraft under the guise of etiquette. The royals' ability to speak wasn't a soft skill. It was a weapon. Language, rhetoric, and public persuasion were tools of rule. In Greece, rhetoric was the hallmark of a civilized leader. Athenian aristocrats learned from masters like Isocrates, practicing debates and mastering logos, pathos, and ethos. In Rome, elite boys were taught oratory from a young age, memorizing Cicero's speeches. Even in monarchies, a brilliant speech could sway the Senate. In Egypt, the pharaoh's proclamations carried ritual and legal weight. Royal children learned formal language and ceremonial formulas. In Mesopotamia, scribal schools taught how to write persuasively. Persian princes were trained in multiple tongues: Old Persian for court, Aramaic for diplomacy, learning to negotiate, compliment, and intimidate. Indian royal students studied the Arthashastra, which offered tactical lessons in rhetoric, espionage, and diplomacy. In every empire, power wasn't just taken, it was spoken into existence. For ancient royals, the sky was a calendar, a compass, a clock, and a divine script. Mathematics and astronomy were foundational disciplines, shaping how a ruler understood time, taxes, architecture, war, and fate. Babylonian elites predicted eclipses with astonishing precision. Egyptian royal education wove mathematics into every sphere of power, for taxation and monumental building. Astronomy guided their religious calendar. In India, royal classes were exposed to deep mathematical traditions. Greek rulers like Alexander studied arithmetic and astronomy, treating mathematics as a gateway to understanding cosmic order. Chinese imperial courts relied heavily on astronomy, as emperors were seen as cosmic intermediaries. In every culture, the educated ruler didn't just rule over people. They ruled over time, space, and destiny. Books could crown a ruler, but swords kept them on the throne. Military education was vital. In Sparta, royal sons entered the brutal Epochs military academy by age 7, trained in pain tolerance, endurance, and combat. In Persia, royal boys learned riding, archery, and truth-telling, horsemanship being essential for war and hunting drills. India's warrior classes, the Kshatriyas, learned swords, spears, maces, and bows, studying war philosophies through epochs. Egyptian and Mesopotamian princes practiced chariot driving and wrestling. Even Chinese princes, though more insulated by bureaucracy, practiced martial arts. The ruler was expected to embody both the civil and military ideal. Etiquette wasn't fluff. It was strategy. Knowing how to sit, speak, and smile was as much a weapon as a sword. In Han China, princes memorized ritual codes. A single breach could be interpreted as rebellion. In Persia, royal children learned to handle envoys and deflect insults with poise. In India, texts like the Arthashastra outlined navigating betrayal. For ancient elites, every lesson carried the weight of generations. A well-educated ruler could unite kingdoms and stabilize empires. Alexander's conquests were rooted in years of tailored instruction. Nero, despite rigorous training, descended into tyranny. Their failures cast shadows, but royal women like Cleopatra or Rusetian showed their education was an arsenal, keeping them alive and in power. Many rulers became patrons of learning, their childhood instruction becoming models for future generations. Royal education was the empire's gamble on itself. Conclusion: sleep in history's echoes. As we ease out of tonight's journey, take a moment to reflect on these incredible figures and forces. From the resilient Neanderthals, whose strength and surprising culture echo in our very DNA, to the fierce Tamogozan, who shattered gender norms on the battlefield. Their stories are a testament to human spirit. And consider the ancient mariners who turned vast, terrifying oceans into highways of connection, paving the way for our globalized world. Finally, ponder the intricate, often hidden, education of ancient royals, shaping leaders who wielded words, stars, and swords to forge empires. Each of these narratives, in their own way, reminds us that history is not just a sequence of dates and names, but a living, breathing tapestry of human ingenuity, struggle, and triumph. They remind us that the past is never truly boring, especially when viewed through the lens of human resilience and unexpected brilliance. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of history. May your mind be filled with fascinating echoes of the past, and may your sleep be deep and restful. Good night.